The term collectible firearms refers to antique guns and top-of-the-line new guns made in the traditional style. These firearms are mostly handmade by skilled craftsmen using centuries-old techniques. This quality workmanship translates into top-notch performance. This company in England has been manufacturing rifles and shotguns since 1835. It still uses the same traditional gun-making methods, only now with the help of modern-day computerized equipment. Even with that technology, it's still arduous work. Making just one gun takes, depending on the model, up to 1,250 hours of labor. In the factory's machine shop, under a shower of lubricant, a computer-guided tooling machine shapes a solid steel bar into a hollow tube with a rectangular plate, called a lump, on one end. This tube will become the barrel of a shotgun. Here you can see the progression from bar to tube, but it's still somewhat rough. So now a highly skilled barrel maker manually files the tube to obtain exactly the right roundness. This traditional process is known as striking the barrel. With his expert eye, he checks his work by observing how light and shadows fall on the barrel. Now he lays two barrels side by side in a fixture and connects their lumps with pegs. He lays a strip of silver solder along the joint and binds the adjoined lumps with steel wire. Then he brushes on flux, a chemical which prevents steel from oxidizing and helps molten solder flow into the joint. He now loads this end of the pair of barrels into a small furnace. Within about 20 minutes, the fiery heat, peaking at a temperature of 1,650 degrees Fahrenheit, melts the silver solder, which flows into the joint. The barrels are now bonded. Next, he lays a thin strip of steel called a rib in the gap between the joined barrels. This time, he uses flux made of pine tree resin, which works better than chemical flux when soldering with tin. He immobilizes the rib with steel wedges and wire. Then, using a hand torch, melts tin solder to fix the rib between the barrels. After removing the wire and wedges, he cleans off the flux and excess tin with abrasive paper, revealing a seemingly seamless double barrel. Now he mounts the double barrel on a fixture and coats what's called a lapping rod with oil and an abrasive powder. He moves the rod back and forth within the barrels until their inside is ground to within a fraction of an inch of the required diameter. This process also smooths the interior of the bore to a mirror-like finish. The barrel maker then polishes the outside surface to a shine. Meanwhile, the action body, the part that houses the gun's mechanics, has already been roughly shaped. Now, the final machining in a bath of paraffin to wash away the metal debris. In a process called spark erosion, copper electrodes of varying shapes erode the steel to create the required slots, holes, and recesses. Quite the transformation from what started out as a solid piece of steel. It's critical that the action's 60-plus intricate components will fit together with ultimate precision. Once again, nothing beats the traditional method. The actioner blackens the component with a smoke lamp. Here, he's fitting the trigger plate. He positions it in the action, taps a few times, then removes it. The black soot marks left behind indicate where the plate needs to be filed down. He repeats this procedure again and again until the plate fits perfectly. He does this with each and every one of the action's components. Using the same marking method, he also files the lumps on the barrel to fit to the action perfectly. They hook onto a cross pin and serve as a hinge on which the barrel pivots against the action. He also marks and files the face of the barrel so that it fits perfectly with the face of the action. Such flawless precision is the hallmark of top-of-the-line firearms. The shotgun's action is finished, but there are still two main components to come. The lock is the firing mechanism. The stock is the gun's wooden butt end that you steady against your shoulder to shoot. Once those components join the others, the whole shotgun will be complete, lock, stock, and barrel. Some double-barreled shotguns have two triggers, one per barrel. Others have a single trigger which fires each barrel alternately. Depending on the style of the gun, the two barrels are positioned either side by side or one over the other. The gun's firing mechanism is called the lock. A double-barreled gun has two locks, one for each barrel. Each lock consists of a plate with 14 components. They've all been machined by the factory's computer-guided tooling equipment. An expert craftsman assembles them by hand. To test the lock, he uses a cocking key to simulate what happens when you pull the trigger. The key depresses two spring-loaded sears that release and drives a tumbler forward, striking a firing pin to fire the gun. The locks are installed on both sides of the action body, just above the trigger. In the factory stocking shop, another craftsman lays a template for the gun's stock onto a piece of Turkish walnut, traces, and then saws out the shape. The wood appears quite ordinary now, but wetting it a bit shows the rich grain which an extensive finishing later on will bring out. Just like the actioner before, he uses a smoke lamp to fit the action to the head of the stock, the soot marks telling him where to shave the wood with various chisels. This meticulous process takes more than 40 hours because he first has to strip the action of all its parts, then fit the main body into the stock, then reassemble the action piece by piece, fitting each and every one into the wood separately. Now, using a tool called a draw knife, he finalizes the stock's shape. By the time he finishes, the block of walnut has gone from this to this. A finishing specialist now applies linseed oil mixed with a hardener and polishes the wood many times over until the wood is lustrous. In the factory's engraving shop, decorative work is underway on each lock plate. An engraving artist first draws the design on paper, then on the plate in pencil. She then uses a sharp tool called a graver to cut the design into the metal plate. This process, while painstaking, requires minimal pressure. The graver is made of either high-speed steel or tungsten carbide, extremely hard metals which cut into steel quite easily. Later on, they'll highlight the engraving with black ink and varnish the surface to prevent tarnishing. Now, the action and lock plates undergo a heat treatment process that hardens the steel so that it won't wear out over time. This process leaves colors on the surface. On luxury guns like these, customers typically request designs or markings in gold inlay. After disassembling the barrels, the craftsman inlays, in this case, a barrel number. After cutting the number, he undercuts the edge of it so that the gold he then beats into the number will lock in place. Then he files the gold inlay flush with the surface and smooths off the excess with an abrasive stone. Every gun goes out to an independent authority for extensive firing tests. The gun returns certified with proof marks. The very last operation is a chemical treatment to protect the steel barrel from rusting. The steel reacts to this chemical process by turning from its natural silver color to black. Because these guns are not mass-produced, but handcrafted, with each and every component custom fit to the neighboring component, parts from one gun are never interchangeable with those of another, even if they're the same model. It takes approximately 1,000 working hours to produce a single gun, so customers placing an order typically wait at least a couple of years until delivery.